I'm not going to be the victim. I'm going to run my career the way I want it. I'm going to run my life the way I want it. I'm going to be accountable when I make mistakes. I'm going to be resilient when life punches me in the face. And that's how you can transform your life.
Hey everybody, and welcome to the Exit Is Now podcast. I'm hanging out with our new friend, Kerry. Flew in from Durango, right? Durango, Colorado, which I didn't realize was so far away from Denver.
Yes.
But thank you for coming in and hanging out with the EPI team over the past couple of days.
Yeah,
Good to have
thanks
you
for
here.
having me. It's been a lot of fun.
So you guys, so for our listeners that are inside of our EPI community, our Certified Exit Planning Advisors, and all of our professional advisors that follow us, you will get to meet her at this year's Exit Planning Summit in April in Marco Island. So I could probably go down like a whole laundry list. She's like literally one of the most fascinating people. I'm such a fan. But I mean, formally, she is the CEO of Stoneage, which is an industrial cleaning manufacturer of industrial cleaning equipment. Is that fair
correct.
to say? Okay.
Yeah, high-tech squirt guns on steroids.
Yeah, right? So super cool there. She's been there for nearly 17 years, so we're going to dive into that. She's also an Entrepreneur of the Year, most influential CEO. She is the new author, right? This is your first book.
My first book.
Of The Ownership Mindset. Great book. I would highly recommend this. She's a speaker, author, and you'll again see her at the Women in Exit Planning Symposium in April. So again, welcome, and kind of let's just dive in. So what has been the growth rate? And I'm going to start current and work my way back. But what is the current growth rate that you've experienced? Because it's been like phenomenal 10 years for even just last 10.
Yeah, we grow double digit every year.
Yeah.
The only 2 years that we didn't grow double digits was in 2009 and 2020.
Well, of course, right? Recession and pandemic.
Uh-huh.
So, and how does that, what's the feel of that? Because we were talking earlier today, we have similar growth rate. We were 66% growth last year, 45%, and probably will sustain a 45% track. And it's been like a wild ride for me, I could tell you. It's like super fun, a little nerve-wracking, a little exhausting, but it's been a cool ride. What about you?
Yeah, it's been amazing. I like the 12 to 15% per year.
Yeah, right.
Because it's challenging, but as we'll probably get into, I'm very big on culture.
Right.
And
Huge.
so I think when you're growing, it's always a good thing, right? If you're not growing, you're dying. But growing fast, it comes with a lot of challenges, and you have to be really intentional about your culture and how that changes it. So yeah, it's been a lot of fun, but I really appreciate that we've had a couple of 30, 35% year growths and growth years, and it is very
you can
challenging.
Feel the pressure.
Yeah, when you're adding all of these new people and trying to onboard them and get them to figure out the culture and also keep up with client demand.
Yeah.
It's very, very challenging, but I love that growth. I think it's what keeps us very motivated and solving really tough challenges in industry.
Yeah. So take me back then down pat year one of 17. So you came in as the director of operations. So what was the company like then?
Yeah, it was tiny. We were about 30 people. I think I was employee number 33 and about 8 million in revenue that year. And so it was kind of a mom and pop type feel. Yeah. It was the two founders were both engineers and
both local to Durango or
one
Colorado?
local to Durango, both Colorado natives.
Okay.
One Durango native, and so it was a very kind of family-like feel.
Mm-hmm.
There were a lot of employees who had been with them for almost the whole time. The company was 27 years old. I was 28. I always tease the founders. I was 1 year old when you started the company. They don't like that.
Yeah, they don't like that all that much anymore. Yeah.
Thank you for making me feel old.
Man.
And now it's funny, me being there for 17 years and having people kind of say those things. I was like, oh God, that was not funny.
Yeah.
No wonder they weren't laughing when I make that joke. But the company was 27 years old when I came on board, and it was poised to go through the next phase of growth. But the two founders had taken it, like a lot of entrepreneurs, especially engineers who start companies, right? This is as far as we can take it, especially that they wanted to do other things in their lives as well. So That's what they brought me in at, and so I had a lot to learn. At 28, you don't know a lot about running a company.
Yeah, I mean, as director of operations, that's no joke. 30 people, like it's a big deal.
Yeah, well, and they were actually looking for a general manager. That's the job I applied for, but they gave me the title of director of operations because I was so young and so inexperienced. But they still gave me the whole company, and so I tell John it was just a way for them to get me cheaper. Which
right,
right?
We're gonna alter your
we got
salary
a deal
a little
on
bit.
her.
Right.
Exactly. Yeah, we're not going to give you that title because that title would require another $15,000.
Right.
But I was just really grateful for the opportunity. I knew they were taking a huge risk on me. My life was a complete mess at the time, and so they did not know that. They obviously know my story now, which I'm sure we'll get into a little bit.
Sure.
But I was so grateful for the opportunity to really test out my leadership capabilities. I always knew I had this leadership gene in me. I was, captain of the softball team, as a freshman in high school and as a sophomore in college, and always gravitated to those leadership positions. And so it was just a huge opportunity for me to rebuild my life into, what it is today.
Yeah. Right. So you had come, and then you said you had come home, right, from Texas?
Yeah, I was in Austin.
Yeah, you were in Austin and came home. So what a great opportunity.
Yeah.
Do you remember what it was like for you entering a business? So you went to school for engineering.
Yes.
So did you understand the manufacturing process? You were at Eaton, I think you said before that.
Yeah, I got after I graduated from Colorado School of Mines, I moved down to Austin and I had started working for Eaton Corporation in their electrical switchgear manufacturing division, actually running their engineering services team.
Yeah.
So I've always, I went to engineering school, then I worked with engineers immediately out of college, and I started to learn the complexity of manufacturing operations, and that's what I loved. I'm a people person,
of course,
and I learned quickly that just because you're good at math doesn't make you a good engineer. I didn't want to be an engineer, but I love the technical products, and I understand design, and so the reason why I applied for the job at Stoneage was because when I read the job description and researched the company, it was like, well, even though I've never run a company before, I've done all these things, and the P&L that I was responsible for at Eaton was much, much bigger than the
what
size
they
of
were
Stoneage.
even doing. Yeah, right.
So I knew that I had applicable experience in manufacturing, and then of course having the engineering background. But
cool.
Honestly, I wouldn't have even gotten the interview if I didn't graduate from School of Mines because.
Really?
Yeah, one of the founders, Jerry Zink, was a Mines graduate, and John, he graduated from CU Boulder, but was working as a research assistant in the mining department where he met Jerry. And so, because my resume was not, what a traditional candidate would have looked like,
right.
Because I had Colorado School of Mines as my alma mater. They said, well, we're going to interview her because we know how hard it is to get through that school.
It's always weird to think about. You never probably would have thought that would have played into So I went here locally in Cleveland. There's a high school called St. Edward High School, all boys, private Catholic school. And when you go around the country, and I used to do way more traveling pre-pandemic, like 200 something days a year, you would bump into people and be like, oh, you're a St. Ed's grad in Cleveland, and then there's this weird respect that comes in,
right?
But it is it has certainly, those things do open doors. So fast tracker though, because you started there 2007, and in 2 years they named you to CEO. So what was that like?
Shocking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Was there conversations being had about you taking over?
Yeah. So about a year in, so John and I had agreed on a 5-year plan to go to general manager.
Okay.
So because I was so young, and he said, okay, I'll mentor you. And but about a year into me being at the company, he sat me down and he said, well, you're doing a great job. I bought a boat, and so I'm going to leave and I'm going to promote you into the GM, even though that's faster than what we had talked about, but you're doing a great job. And so okay, that's great. I was going on a vacation. I was taking a 2-week vacation to Costa Rica. I said, well, wait till we get back, because I also I said, if you're going to make me GM and I'm going to do this, we have to let 3 people go. There are 3 people in this company who are not performing.
So what do you have to say about that?
And so he said, okay, he agreed with me. He was not the person who was ever going to fire anybody. People could get away with anything at the company. But I said, I'm not going to be running this company with these 3 people who are here. And so I said, but I need to go on vacation. And then when I come back, let's announce the promotion. And then I need to do this,
do my thing.
do this thing.
Yeah.
And so that was was kind of that was my first step into general management. And then I wasn't expecting the CEO position, but we were having a lot of conversations about the board of directors. And so I reported to John, who was our chairman and president of the company. And I would go to board meetings, but it was always kind of weird thing. I wasn't on the board, but obviously I was taking over the company.
Yeah.
And so it was actually the board who had the conversation with John and said, look, we think that she should be named CEO. She's growing the company like crazy.
Yeah, you have a lot of proof.
And you're gone. You're on a boat half the year.
Yeah, where's his boat at? Like in California, or where did he go?
Florida.
So he came down to Florida. It's always interesting because like the Westerners always go to like California or Hawaii.
Yeah.
And we in the Midwest go down to like Naples, Bonita Springs. That's where my parents have a place, but neither.
Well, he wanted to do the trip through, around the East Coast and then down the Mississippi.
Oh, cool.
And so that was what they were getting ready for. So that was really the decision then that said, okay, let's name her as CEO. Then she's on the board, and we can start really getting her ready to take over the company. So that's how that transition happened.
So that was 2009, and for our audience too, Stoneage is an ESOP company. So you guys became an ESOP then in 2015, and you were leading the company then.
Yeah, I led us through the ESOP transition.
The ESOP transition. But you were telling me too, and I think an interesting story is that the founders were also kind of employee inclined to invest into the business. So you guys were already doing some employee investing before you were an ESOP.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, they started with a profit sharing program in the late 80s, early 90s, and the results were amazing. I mean, it was a tiny little company, but they started teaching people to care about the bottom line and how you're impacting the bottom line. And so then they needed some outside capital to invest in some manufacturing equipment. And they said, well, why don't we sell some stock to the employees? This is really working, instead of having to go, get a bank loan to get $100,000, back in the mid 90s. And so they created this homegrown stock ownership program where employees could invest their money in the company. And then we were sub S corporation, so we obviously have a pass through from a tax liability perspective. So they paid out quarterly distributions, just like they were for themselves, to any of the shareholders, and it was typically in excess of your tax liability. So it became a really lucrative program. In fact, in the early 2000s, they set up a program with a local bank to allow Stoneage employees to take out loans to buy stock. So employees would have to put 25% down, and the company would actually back it because they knew that they could obviously do good on it if the employee defaulted. And we were paying out distributions, and usually enough to be able to pay the loan as well. So that just sped it up. And in 2014, we had 80 plus shareholders, shareholders, and the employees had bought about 40% of the company. So it was a really successful program, but there were issues.
So why the change?
A couple of things. One is that we were bouncing up against the 100 shareholder limit of a sub S corporation. We had hired our first international employee, and you can't have international shareholders in a sub S corporation because of the pass through tax liability. And they needed a true exit strategy. And I remember talking to them multiple times about what the plan was, and we have an insurance policy. So when we die, the company can buy back X percent of the stock. But I was like, well, then who owns it? Like, your family owns it, and they're not interested in this business. And we've got a couple machinists who have been here for 20 years buying stock. Those guys don't want to own the company and be the largest shareholders. Right. We have to do something to really start to plan for succession. And because we had such a successful program with this kind of skin in your game system that allowed all employees to participate, but not everybody did because they didn't have the money or they weren't comfortable with the risk, even though there was no risk. It was such a good investment. We decided that broad ownership was really what we wanted to do. And there was never any talk. I mean, we get approached by private equity and by competitors all the time. And that was absolutely not what they wanted for their legacy, for their company, for all of us. And so that's why we decided to do an ESOP.
So, I mean, this is kind of jumping into the book a little bit. Did they have a big influence on like your journey for ownership thinking?
Absolutely.
Right? They sound like they did. They were very. I think that's unique, right? To your point, saying, I have a unique company. I have a unique product, great company growing. I'm sure you guys are getting offers from private equity and other competitors that can merge you into what they do. And they're like, no, it's not about that. I want this. It's got to be, they would have to, I would assume, influences in the book for you.
Absolutely. John taught me how to think and act like an owner.
Yeah.
Prior to coming to Stoneage, I was a mess, and I was very, but I was very self-centered, very self-focused, always driven, but pretty much about me. And I had a little bit of a victim mentality. When things weren't going well, it was easy to be able to point to, okay, well, the CEO of my company is not doing a great job, and the culture is this, and I didn't really take ownership. I took ownership of my performance, but I didn't take ownership of, the overall health of the company. And that's not atypical for people in their 20s, right?
Yeah,
I mean, we're figuring
totally.
stuff out.
Yeah.
But John really gave me a lot of rope to figure out how to run the company. And what I didn't understand then is, he wanted to buy this boat and go do something different.
Yeah, right.
And his future, life was dependent on my success.
Yeah.
And
Right.
so he did tell me actually just like 6 or 7 months ago, when we were talking about the book, he was like, yeah, it was really hard to give you autonomy and trust, because like handing the keys of Porsche to a 16-year-old. Right?
Yeah, right.
It's like,
Exactly.
okay, go figure this out.
100%.
But that's what he did. I mean, and when I would come in to talk to him about what I should do in a certain situation, he would say, well, what do you think?
Exactly.
When I had to go deal with, issues with customers, he would say, I trust you to go figure it out. He would let me do things that he didn't even agree with. Like I remember when I came in, they didn't have a budget. It was in his head, right? He's been running the company for
old
27
school
years,
manufacturing guy, right?
He would literally say, I think we're going to do, $7 million this year, and I'm just going to divide that by, here's historically divided by 12. Like as long as we're hitting these numbers, we're fine. Well, I come from Eaton Corporation, right, where we have crazy
process,
yes,
budgets,
insane.
Yeah,
and I was like, and I also needed a tool to be able to make decisions. And so I said, we need a budget. And he said, we are never going to have a budget. This company is not going to have a budget. But here was his reasoning. And I get it. They were so focused on taking care of the customer. And he thought, well, if we have a budget, then people are going to say, oh, I can't do that for the customer. It's not in the budget. And I was like, John, I don't think that that's like the purpose. But it is about making trade-offs and making decisions. And it's all in your head, and it's not in my head. And so he said, okay, I will let you, if you think that that's going to help you, I will let you do it. And, didn't roll his eyes, but, kind of rolled his eyes.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And thank goodness we did. We put our first budget together for 2009.
Yeah.
And that's when everything started to fall apart. And then we did have to make tough decisions about, how is this going to impact us? Yeah. And because we had and we made a lot of mistakes in that first budget, but because we had put the time into thinking through decisions, we were able, and my team understood it as well. We were able to, we did so good. We grew 1% that year when everybody else in the industry was destroyed. We came back and we grew 45% that next year.
In 2010.
In 2010.
Yeah.
And it's because of how we managed the company. Now I'm still learning, right? I mean, I'm 2 years into the job and
you're like 30, right?
Yeah. I'm still figuring this all out. But at the end of that year, when we came out in a really good position compared to what was going on with the rest of the world, he said, you were right. And I'm really glad that you pushed me to create that budget.
Yeah, I was going to say they probably learned a lot from you too.
Oh,
thinking
definitely.
about it, right? Bringing in like the more formalities that allow for scale.
Yes.
I think that. What if they were sitting here with us? I think so. We talk about this obviously a lot in our exit planning world. Is like the decentralizing the owner, which is what they were doing with you, but also relinquishing control. Have you ever talked to them about like what that felt like? I mean, you kind of described it, but like, were they naturally inclined to do that? Did they have advisors telling like, hey guys, you need to bring a successor in? Like, what was the? Do you have any? Like, what was the mindset?
Yeah. I've asked them a lot. So it was actually the management team that pushed them to hire me. John was leaving more and more to go, boating and doing his thing. And he had this idea that, it could be decision by management team. But when no one's in charge, everyone's in charge.
Exactly.
And so it was very difficult for them to agree on making decisions and who was responsible for what. And so they came forward and said, look, we need to have, if you're not going to be here and not going to lead the company, we have to have somebody. And so it was the management team who pushed them to go out and look for a general manager. And I think that as John started to see that this is what the company needs, he started to get more enticed by it because that meant more freedom for him. I think in talking to him about what it was like, it was very difficult for him. Like he said, right? Giving the keys to a Porsche to a 16-year-old. But he's one of the most amazing mentors I've ever had. Amazing business person. And I can't imagine, to be honest, very many founders doing what he did for me.
That's what I'm saying. I think it's super unique.
It is.
I do.
And now that I know more about founder management transitions and how unsuccessful they typically are, I also know that it was me too. The two other candidates that I was up against were more traditional candidates, white men in their 50s who had lots of manufacturing experience. I know both of them now. There's no way that they could have taken the company to the place that I've taken it. And there's no way that they would have come in. I worked with them. I learned from them. I honored the company. I cared about the culture. Like I didn't have all this baggage I had baggage, but not baggage of like, this is how I've done it before. This is how I've done it before. I had just enough from working at Eaton, and actually much bigger company experience to be able to, but at that low level in the organization of actually doing work, rather than, at the executive level. Not that executives don't do work, but you know what I mean.
I know what you mean. I know
really
what you
close
mean.
to the customer, really close to employees. So, and so I do think that he saw that I had a lot to bring to the table. And I'm so driven and I'm such a relationship builder that it made it, I think, easy for me to really fit into the culture. And he could see that, we had a great first year that I was there. 2007 was amazing. And that always helps, I think, build some confidence.
Build confidence right out of the gate.
And it was luck. It was not like anything miraculous that I did. But I think that definitely helped. But I can't imagine many people doing what he did with me at the age that I was at and the experience level I
think it's so unique because we're going through it here at EPI, and I asked my dad this a lot too about like the relinquishing of control. If Dad was here, I'd tell him he's a pretty controlling dude, right? So, and rightfully so, he came out of the corporate world, right, and took basically everything that he had saved up in his 401k and basically rolled the dice with me and buying EPI with me. So I had sold a company, right? I was hanging out with Dad in his a consulting company where he was a member of EPI. And I said, Dad, I think you need to flip this script, right? And work with advisors instead of owners. So, and then here we are rolling the dice, him and I putting everything together, putting our funds together and buying EPI. And then same thing, it was 2020, so Dad wasn't buying boats or anything. But Dad was, I always say this, I don't know if he would admit this or not, but we were standing right outside the studio, right by the printers out there, and our whole company was sitting around here, and we were about to announce that, given the state of Ohio protocols, like we all got to go home and work from home. Right. And we were pretty traditional in person. All of our programs were in person. Our office was very much an in person. I thought it was like a leading thing to like build culture and stuff, and I'm kind of a classic old school guy. And we let everybody go, and the leadership team kind of let everybody go home, and the leadership team stuck around to figure out what's next. And then we said we had to start pivoting our product because can you imagine you manufactured one of your products and a bunch of people had bought it, but you don't have any trains, planes, cars, you can't get it there. So we have like 300 people awaiting a SEPA program and kind of getting pissed off, and people need some cash, they want some refunds, and we're like, this is bad. So we got to get this program, we have to get this program going. So Dad, as like our CEO, we're looking at Dad for some advice, and Dad was so removed from the daily operations of the company that he goes, man, I could like give you some general advice, but like I don't know the specifics as much anymore. And it was the first time I like truly, Dad, gave the keys to the Porsche to the kid and said, Scott, I need you and your leadership team to like make this happen. Like, I'll stay out of your way. And so we always reflect on that too, because that same year, Dad did a ton of estate planning and personal planning. He's a traditional baby boomer, right? Very focused on the business, 60-hour work week kind of guy. So it allowed him to step out. And then once he started doing that, kind of like your guys going out on their boat, Dad bought a lake house during the pandemic. Him and my mom started going down there. So he's not, circumnavigating the United States or around the tip of Florida, but he's, cruising in his pontoon. So, but now, same type of thing. Now, Dad, who doesn't really know the leadership team all that well because he's not here daily, now has to rely on a bunch of people that I was telling you pre-show that the average age of the leadership team here at EPI today is 31 and a half. So even younger back then. So even more of that mentality of like, okay, I'm taking everything that I own and trusting my son, Scott, I guess I was like 37 or something like that, and 36. And then his leadership team, which is a bunch of 26 years old, he's like, shit, I got to get out of here. I got to have at it, son. Like, I can't watch. And it ended up being great for us. It totally changed who we are as a whole company. So that's why I'm so interested in hearing that story and understanding their mindset, because we're living it really here at EPI.
And so let me ask you a question. So
sure,
what was that like for you? So, your dad it's a crisis, right? We have no idea what this is going to look like, how long it's going to take, what the impact is going to be. And he's like, have at it.
You have to,
Yeah. So what was that like for you?
My life at that time was wild. Like, I was going through like a really horrible breakup. The pandemic was like really heavy on me and stuff too. So my personal life was all crazy, and then this business life. And I could tell you from an owner's perspective, you feel probably this way too, working with your people, especially with your general mindset. There's like a responsibility. Like, we didn't lay off anybody. We didn't let anybody go. We kept everybody together. I actually relinquished my paycheck 2 months to give it to some of the other employees that were in need. So very stressful time, but like super opportunistic. It was that time where I was like, my dad made me hold the vice president title almost my entire time here. When then we were able to pivot through the pandemic, and in 2021 is when we made the announcement. But Dad was always do the job before you get the job. I always give Dad a little crap because I was like, I think I was doing the job for like 3 years before that. I don't know how long do the job, get the job. But it was also, I can remember sitting like, this was my moment, right? To look at my dad and my business partner and say, I think I've formed the team, and I think that we can do this. And I can see it. I just got to get it down on paper. So as nerve-wracking as it was at that time, it was like super opportunistic, and it was either like make or break. Dad's either going to believe in it or not. If I'm either going to hit a home run here, or I'm going to screw it up and lose our family investment, and Dad will know. And Dad says today in his second edition of Walking to Destiny, he talks about that story and how gritty our team was. And so, but it was honestly, it was thanks for asking. It was like a very reflective question. It was a wild ride, and we did a lot. One of the reasons I wanted to have you on the show is that I think we actually have a lot of synergies. We think the same way. So when I read your stuff, read your book, and started to follow you, I was like, I need to talk to her, because I'm trying to do what you did 17 years ago and what you've done across 17 years in this kind of ownership mindset. It'd be interesting for you to talk to Paige, our director of marketing, because she's one that also has shifted her. I was laughing on one of our other podcasts. Paige is the first employee to sit in a review, and Paige and I are pretty close. I gave her like a good raise, and I gave her what I thought was a good bonus, and I think she thought it too. But you could tell sitting there, she's got a really bad poker face. So she was sitting there. I was like, Paige, what's on your mind? Like, pretty much you could make your own route here. So just if this isn't good enough, like I'm trying to do the best I can, but tell me what you need. She's like, no, it's not that. I put together this, and she slides a piece of paper across the desk. And it was not all the income generation stuff that she did that made our company grow by 60%. It was all the value she created. So total owner mindset shift from, I'm not just doing marketing. The marketing that I'm doing is growing the company and driving value for the owners. And I want to participate in that. So, and I think it's interesting too, at our company retreat last year, we talked a lot about employee ownership. Like, there's several folks on our leadership team that you've met over the past couple of days that want to get in the game. So it's kind of cool. So I got to take a quick break, and I want to dive into the book stuff. So we'll be back in just a couple of minutes.
Great.
The Exit Planning Institute is the authority in exit planning. With its award-winning process, the value acceleration methodology, provides deep insights into how to help business owners create more significant companies while blending and aligning their business, personal, and financial goals. EPI brings together the world's most elite exit planning advisors to form the EPI community. The EPI community represents over 15,000 professional advisors worldwide, including its 5,000 certified exit planning advisors. These advisors include financial advisors, growth consultants, CPAs, attorneys, M&A advisors, amongst others, who come together to expand their knowledge, create and innovate, network and relationship build, grow their practices, and better attract and engage business owner clients. Join EPI today and gain access to the community, content, courses, credential, and conference that you as the professional advisor need in order to harness the opportunity with small to lower middle market business owners who strive to grow a company of significance, thus having a highly valuable and transferable company. Follow the Exit Planning Institute on LinkedIn and visit earnsepa.com to learn more about the community leading the exit planning profession.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast. So diving all over the place, I was just talking at the break, like I got to refocus ourselves here because I could get down a whole rabbit hole, Kerry. So I want to go back to the ESOP stuff because again, I think it's an interesting exit option. I think it's a growing exit option in the United States, something that we talk a lot about, that we teach at our SEPA program. But I would say that when you converted, so you already had this kind of employee feel to it, but when you converted over to the formal ESOP, maybe a double question, did it help you grow, but also was there any growing pains and any kind of negativities that came with this huge transition?
Yeah. So I feel really lucky that that we had already been employee owned before going to the ESOP. A lot of founders who decided to do an ESOP and who haven't at least had even a profit sharing program, people don't get it. And so there's a lot of education that has to happen to get people to buy into it. I didn't have quite that big of a gap because we already had this program and we already had this ownership mentality, not nearly what it is today, that we've articulated it and we're very intentional about it now. So I think that I had an easier time with the transition than a lot of people do because of what we had. I always tell people,
I'm almost already instilled into you guys.
Exactly. And so I always tell people, if you are interested in employee ownership, which I think is a really, really great model, you should start with a profit sharing program because take half of your bonus and say half of it's going to be profit sharing, half of it you still will have bonuses that from individual performance, but it gets people thinking about the company as a whole, not just what do I get.
Right.
And so because of that, it was a little bit easier of a transition for us rather than it is compared to a lot of people. But there were definitely growing pains. So let me answer the first question. Did it help us grow? Absolutely. Employee retention, customer loyalty, supplier preference because of how we show up, right? We show up as owners. We care more. Is
that real? Like that's real.
It's real.
Your folks at your company today, that's real for them.
Absolutely. If you come and you tour Stoneage, people will want to stop and
I'm going to take you out. I want to come. I would love to come to see what you guys do.
Yeah, it's really quite impressive.
But you could feel it.
You can feel it. In fact, anybody who comes to visit us, and I love it when our customers tell us, like, how do I get a job here? Like, I never have seen people who love their job so much, and they genuinely seem to like each other. But not all employee-owned companies have cultures like that. We are very, very intentional in how we have cultivated this what we call the own it mindset there. So yes, it absolutely is a part of our not just our growth story, but our profitability. We are incredibly profitable, and I do believe that we do more with less because our employees are like, I mean, do we really want that person? Right?
Because they're starting to think like owners.
Exactly.
Absolutely right.
Exactly. So we don't have a lot of the same issues with disengagement and lack of productivity that so many other companies have. So yes, it definitely has benefited us. The growing pains was really transitioning from the skin in the game, which feels like real ownership, where an ESOP is administered as a retirement benefit.
Right. Right.
And so every year you get an ESOP statement, but it doesn't feel real, right? You're not getting distributions anymore. You're not putting your own money into the company. And so we had to figure out how to make that transition from a skin in the game to an entitlement program where it still felt meaningful for people. And so we actually stopped talking and we also have to get people who are younger to care about it, right? A lot of Gen Zers are like retirement, right?
Yeah, right. Like, why do I care about this?
Have a planet. I
Yeah,
don't know,
right.
Why give me my money now? Because I don't believe it in 50 years. Like it's gonna.
Yeah, it's even gonna be here. It won't even matter.
Right, exactly. But so how we talk about it is it's truly an ownership model, and how you maximize it is you stay with the company for as long as you're adding value to the company and the company is adding value to you, and then roll it over into an IRA.
Okay.
But it's your money.
Yeah.
And so if you leave the company, you can take a 10% tax penalty and go do something with it. And we've had 2 employees leave and cash out their ESOP and take the penalty to go start new businesses. And I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
You know, if people
Yeah, of
are,
course,
if
yeah.
it's supporting entrepreneurialism and people going after their dreams, it's their money. And so we talk about it as ownership. And ownership isn't about making money, getting rich fast, right? It's about building value over time.
100%.
And so that has really helped, I think, when we don't even use the word retirement benefit. We talk about it. This is our ownership structure. And
That's interesting.
And so I think that really does help a lot. And then we do a lot of education around the wealth generation that can happen to help people see that it's meaningful. Because we are a profitable company, it's a very rich benefit, and so it is meaningful. Not all ESOPs are, and so people really do see. I mean, our goal is to create 1,000 millionaires through employee ownership.
Wow.
And I do think that many of our employees, all of our employees, see a path to being a millionaire because of I mean, obviously you have to stay with the company, but I think that's a really I think that's a really big motivator for people. Like I actually, somebody who a shipping clerk, right? Somebody who starts out as a shipping clerk, somebody a apprentice machinist, right? Who are thinking, how would I ever be able to, have retire with $1 million+ dollars? People see that there is actually a path there.
That's cool.
The issue that we're going to have, and it's something that we're figuring out how to address, is that people's ESOP accounts are going to be so big that and they don't have any way to access it unless they don't work for the company anymore. We don't want people to feel like they have to quit to access the money. And so there are mechanisms that allow you to be able to take some money out of your ESOP. And we're going to we're researching that so that in 2025 or 2026, we might allow people to, take out X percent of their ESOP.
So they can go actually utilize it.
They can go buy a house or, send their kids to college or something like that. Not that they have $1 million sitting there and going, oh, I need that, right? I need something to go be able to live.
Well, there's opportunities, right?
Exactly.
We talk about this in like estate planning and gifting. It's actually interesting in our family too, and what my parents want to do. It was if my brother-in-law is listening. My brother-in-law always challenges me and Dad. My brother-in-law Dan used to work here, and now he's a consultant at another company, doing similar, actually, kind of consulting SEPA style work. But in our family meeting, he had challenged Mom and Dad to think about. My mom and dad are 65, so if we don't get access to their stuff, right, their inheritance, if you will, until they pass, but my dad was talking through. What would that look like? And Dan said, Dad, that is very generous. Like, thank you. But I might challenge you to actually, if you're going to gift this somewhere down the road, and you're saying your wealth gap is small, so you and your mom can live the way you're living, why don't you start gifting now so that you can have direct effect? My sister is like 34 years old. They have a little 2-year-old son. Like, if you want to be impactful, like, we need it now. We're both working.
Yeah.
My sister's an attorney. We got little Finn running around 2 years old. It would be impactful today. So that's interesting because you might be able to, particularly even a 40, 45-year-old person, if they can access some of that now, you could be a life changer for them in that moment. And that's interesting to think. Yeah. That's an interesting problem to have.
Yeah. And it kind of goes in the face of this idea of it being a retirement benefit, but we can't lose people because they don't, and who don't want to actually leave the company,
Yeah.
but they need the money more.
They need the money, yeah.
And so we've got to figure that out, because we are going to have some significant ESOP balances, and I think it's gonna become an issue for us.
Yeah.
Not right now.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, we have a couple people who have over $1 million in their ESOP, but it will, in 5 years from now, we're going to have a bigger issue.
Yeah.
So we've got to
That's
be
interesting. You
thinking
gotta be
about that.
Pretty proactive.
I mean, good problem to have as far as I'm
Great.
concerned.
I think it's fascinating.
Yes,
and congratulations. I mean, it does sound like a great company to work for. So let's get into some of the book stuff.
Yes.
So let's start at the beginning. What was the inspiration for this?
So I've always been a writer.
Okay.
Yes, I know. Engineering and journalism.
Yeah, you kind of math, writing. Okay.
Yes.
People. You like people.
I do like people.
Yeah. So
I love people.
yeah.
I was actually I was copy editor of my high school newspaper, editor in chief.
Okay.
I won writing awards. In fact, my father, who I don't have much of a relationship with, he told me I wasn't smart enough to graduate from engineering school, which is what motivated me to go to engineering school. But he was like, "Why don't you go to journalism school?" Which of course would have been a dumb career move. But I love to write. So it was actually interesting. In 2015, I was trying to figure out. You know, I was feeling like a little bit stale, and I even had thought about leaving Stoneage. I mean,
Wow.
I was like, I think I can go run like a Fortune 500 company.
Wow, how different would have that been?
I can't do that. I would die there. But back then, being young, even young and dumber, I was like, I don't know. It just feels like I need something else. And I was out running. I'm a big trail runner, and I was listening to some free audiobook about finding purpose in your career, and it said go back to doing what you loved as a kid. And I love to speak, and I did my first ever speech I did in college in front of 1,000 people with 3 days notice. I had to fill in for somebody who canceled, and I loved it. And so I was trying to figure out can I have speaking and writing as part of this, and when it said go back to doing speaking as part of my career, going back to do what you love as a kid, well, it was writing, and it was insane. So I am a believer in signs.
Okay.
I literally saw 100 rabbits. All of a sudden, I was like, I need to write. I'm going to write a book. Literally everywhere. And I'm sure it was probably just because it had rained, but I am not kidding you. There were 100 rabbits throughout the rest of my run, running across my path, all this. And I was like, okay, this is the sign. Whatever reason the rabbits are here, I am going to write.
Okay.
And so it was bizarre. It was totally bizarre. I was literally blown away. I actually even stopped and took a video with my phone because there were rabbits everywhere. So anyway, it could have just been a coincidence, but I was believing that it was a sign that yes, I was onto something. So I went home that weekend. I got home from the run on Saturday morning, and I built a blogging website.
Okay.
I went and researched it. It was Weebly, some drop and drag website. And so I built my first blogging website, and I started blogging. I was like, I better practice. If I'm going to write a book, I better start practicing.
Writing,
I find the voice that I used to have when I was in high school, but have lost because I don't write anymore. And so that was the start of it. And probably after a year of writing my blog, I started getting picked up by magazines, by publications. And then when the pandemic hit, I said, this is it. This is the time to write the book. And I had all of this material already written. And so I joined a writing cohort. So that just created the accountability.
Yeah.
And that's how I got the book done. Is every 2 weeks I had to come in and say, I wrote my 2,500 words. Yeah.
I always find it fascinating authors and how they do it. My dad went to his favorite beach in Florida and just got a house, a VRBO, and for a month. Yeah. And would just go to that picnic table on that beach every day and write. That was his, because he was too distracted here. Yeah. That's interesting, though. So the writing cohort was
the accountability piece.
The accountability piece,
Yeah, I wanted to, I hate not following through on doing something I said I was going to do. So, my agreement was that it was 2,500 words every 2 weeks. And then I had to figure out how to write that 2,500 words. I can't just sit down and write 500 words a day. It takes me a little while to get warmed up. Yeah. So I actually wound up writing the book on weekends, skipping ski season.
Yeah, that's a big deal for you, right?
Yeah, big deal for me. I'm a big skier, but I had to get the book done. And so I think when I write the second book, I know I have a framework for what the second one's going to be. I'm going to, do more around what your dad did. I think I'm just going to take a month sabbatical, and I'm just going to go write the book. And because I just do better when I can focus in longer chunks of time. So I learned a lot about myself going through that process.
Very cool.
But yeah, it's a pandemic that allowed it to happen.
Yeah. So this was when did you write this?
So I started writing. I started it in like October of 2020.
Yeah. So yeah.
And then I finished it at the end of 2021.
Yeah. Cool. So so when somebody asks like, what is an ownership mindset for you? How would you describe that?
So it's at the foundational level. It is the philosophy that I am responsible for everything that happens in my life. Mm-hmm. I am personally responsible. I'm responsible for my actions, my outcome, my effort, the quality of my life, the quality of my relationships. I own it. I talk a lot about this in the keynotes that I give.
Yeah.
You know, the opposite of personal responsibility isn't irresponsibility, even though I know a thing or two about that. It's blame. Right? If you're not taking responsibility for your situation, you're blaming other people. And I know a lot about that too. I mean, I blamed my dad for a lot of my problems. I blamed a lot of circumstances for the decisions that I was making in my life. And you know where it got me? Nowhere. I actually on the floor of my apartment, I accidentally overdosed on Labor Day of 2006. And that's when I realized like this life of not owning it is not going to get me what I want. So the ownership mindset is I own it. I own everything that happens in my life. I am not going to be the victim. I'm going to run my career the way I want it. I'm going to run my life the way I want it. I'm going to be accountable when I make mistakes. I'm going to be resilient when life punches me in the face. And that's how you can transform your life.
How'd you get there though? So you're like on rock bottom, and what year was that?
2006.
So 2006, rock bottom. So as you started to build that, everything that you just talked about, what clicked for you? Like how'd you do it? Did you have mentors? Did you because that's a polar opposite shift, what you just described from where you were at.
Yeah. I mean, it happened over time.
Yeah.
So it took me 3 days to be able to get out of bed. And I shouldn't be alive. And I didn't call anybody. So I was on the ground. I don't know how long I was out. But something shocked me alive. Like, I'm supposed to be on this planet for a reason. I should be dead. And I knew what was happening, but because I was living this dual life. I had a successful career. But I had really bad body image issues, body dysmorphia, and combined with this feeling like I was unlovable unless I was a different version of myself, in physical ways and in lots of different ways. It really led me to rock bottom. And but I always worked. I always went to work. Right, I was always destined.
So no one really
successful.
knew what was going on.
No.
Really on the other side.
I mean, my friends did.
Sure.
And a few people at work did, but no, my body, I hid everything from it. I was really
truly like a double life.
Double life, total double life. And so when I couldn't get out of bed for 3 days and go to work, that was rock bottom for me because it was like, and I had about $100,000 in debt. And I just completely lived beyond my means, and I just couldn't pretend anymore. Like everything, I was just a fake.
Yeah.
I was it was a facade, and not being able to go to work those 3 days and just literally laying there, like hating myself, hating the state of my life. But there was still, for whatever reason, this like deep seated like seed of belief, like I could be something more. I could do something more with my life. And so I just decided that that's what I was going to latch onto. And I had to figure out how to grow that. My mom, when I called my mom to tell her, and she knew that I had been struggling. It was about 5 years of up and down with substance abuse. She didn't know how bad I was, but when I called her and I told her I needed to come home, she said to me, look, you have to figure this out. You have so much potential and you're such a natural leader. And I had been lamenting to her. I was a really not happy place at work. And I had been lamenting to her about my crappy boss and like how I could be such a much better leader. And she said to me this, she was like, you are a natural born leader and you can lead people to really great places, or you can lead people right off the cliff with you. Yeah. And if you want to be the leader that I know you can be, that you know you can be, you have to start leading yourself first. And that was the first time I'd ever heard of the concept of self-leadership.
Yeah, you talk about it here.
Yeah.
It's like you talk about that first change in this ownership mindset is to actually lead yourself
Self
first. Right.
And that's what she said to me. And I was like, self-leadership. And then it was so clear. It's like, oh, I'm leading myself every day, whether it's poorly or whether I'm doing it well. I need to start figuring out how to do it well. And so it was actually that statement, which I don't think that she meant to be like this life-altering trajectory for me. But that's when I started studying self-leadership, and I think you have to start with self-awareness. And I needed to be in therapy. I was determined to not have to go to rehab. And why rehab works for many people in the moment is you remove yourself from the situation.
Yeah, right.
And dopamine, I've done a lot of research on dopamine.
Yeah, right.
Dopamine is really difficult to battle, especially when you are in the, when you're in the same place of like, oh, okay, I need to use to get this feeling again. And then it's why so many people fail is they go back into that same situation. So I said, all right, I'm leaving. I'm getting out of Texas. I'm going to go home. And that's how I'm going to remove myself from the situation and not have to go to rehab. So it was kind of like going to rehab, going to live with your mom, especially when you're 28. Not success. But I didn't have any money for therapy. And a good friend of mine said, why don't you try personality assessments? They're free. There's free assessments online. And I was like, personality assessments. And so I started with Myers-Briggs. I did like StrengthsFinder.
Sure.
I did all of these different ones of the Enneagram. And a lot of people don't really believe in them. But for me, it was just this eye-opening experience to go like, oh, that's me. That's why I make those decisions. And it was really empowering because I could start to see where my triggers were, and I could start to see how my father leaving at a young age and being so mean to me really led to self-esteem issues and thinking that I was unworthy. And so I could start to actually unwind the trauma and the negative self-image and all of those things. And I'm still working through all of that. I'm sure.
It's always a process. It's always a journey.
But that's how it started. And then I got my job at Stoneage.
And that was a quick turnaround though, too, though, because you said Labor Day 2006.
It was like September 4th and January 2nd, I started at Stoneage. So like 3 months later, right? It's
and then 2 years after that, you became CEO, right?
It's a wild story.
Wild. 2-3 years of your life. So going back to the ownership mindset, if I were to come to Stoneage, what does that look like? Walking around, what does that feel like?
Oh, people have smiles on their face. They will pull you in to show you the work that they do. They can tell you what the own it mindset is. Every single one of our employees. I mean, our own it mindset's really simple.
Yeah, because you basically test drove this that you've created there. Now you could write the book on it and it works. This
is really honestly a handbook how to become a very authentic, transparent, leader worth following, and then how to go and build a culture or a company like what we have at Stoneage. It's literally what I did over the last 17 years to build this really truly remarkable company that is changing people's lives.
So I'm assuming that everybody at Stoneage was super supportive of this. They got to be like super proud of you, right? It's got to be kind of cool because you have now. If you go to your website, you have your whole personal brand too that's outside of the Stoneage stuff. So like even the colors are different, like very manufacturing, and this is not very manufacturing, right?
No,
like
it's pink and orange.
That's what I'm saying. If you go to her website, her personal brand website, you can see her like videos and her keynotes. And I always thought that was unique when I first met you, is that you have this, and then you have this more traditional, if you will, manufacturing company. So, but everybody, I'm sure, loves this.
Yeah, they do. It's really interesting. I get asked a lot, like, why are you doing this?
And I asked you that before the show.
And there's a couple of reasons. I actually did a podcast with a good friend of mine in Colorado, and he like hammered me on this because he's like, this does not have anything to do with Stoneage. I was like, it does. It has everything to do with Stoneage. And so first and foremost, we want our employees to live their dreams. We want them to live their dreams.
Totally agree.
And that should not have to be something that you do outside of work or after you get done working. And my dream was to write a book. My dream is to be able to help change the world with my story of overcoming substance abuse, of overcoming body image issues, of living this really dead end lifestyle, and like transforming my life and being incredibly grateful and honoring everybody who helped me along the way. And that's why I lived. I'm here not just to run Stoneage, but to share this story with the world, to hopefully inspire others to destigmatize substance abuse and to believe in themselves and to believe that there's a different way to run a company. And so if we want all of our employees to go and live their dreams, like I need to model it. And my dream was always to write this book and to make this big impact. And so people think like, oh, CEOs shouldn't, I've heard this, CEOs shouldn't do this, right? You should just focus on your company. And I was like, but this is my dream. And the number one regret that people have when they die is that they lived their life for other people. They lived their life too much for other people.
I would totally agree with that.
And I am going to model that you do not have to do that. I can be a great CEO and run this great company and grow this company and live my dream too.
Yeah.
And I want every single person who works for me to do that same thing, whether it's they want to start a business, whether they have a side hustle. As long as they're doing their job and helping grow the company and happy and engaged at work, I want to support that.
Yeah, it's cool.
And so that's why I do it. I am meant to be able to share this story. Otherwise, I truly believe that I would have been dead. Like there's a reason that I'm here, and I am not going to waste this second opportunity I had in life, worrying about people judging me or thinking like, oh, she shouldn't do that, or all of these things. Like, nope, I in my heart know that I am following my passion and my purpose, and that I'm making an impact on a lot of people's lives, and that I'm going to help my employees create wealth that will change their lives forever. And I just wish more people would do that. Right?
So
many
do
people
I
just
totally
play it
agree
safe
with
and
that,
scared
right?
and don't go for it. And I think you should go for it.
Yeah, I would totally agree. I want to get back. I want to dive a little bit deeper, but I need to take a quick break. So just give me a couple minutes and we'll be right back.
For business owners, by a business owner. Walking to Destiny is your essential resource for understanding what makes your business highly profitable and significant. It becomes a business owner's handbook to know how to rapidly grow value and ultimately unlock the personal wealth trapped in business. Exit Planning Institute CEO Christopher Snider demonstrates how strategic exit planning will help you achieve improvements today while positioning you to build wealth for generations. Secure your success along other value creators. Discover, prepare, and decide what your walk to destiny will ultimately be. If executed correctly, these strategies can grow a business owner's wealth by 10 times. Walking to Destiny, the second edition, the 11 actions an owner must take to rapidly grow value and unlock wealth. Get your copy today at www.walkingtodestiny.com.
Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Exit Is Now podcast. So we're just diving in to Kerry's book here. So one of the things that you were just talking about is some of the folks that say you can't do this and that. So you're also a mother. You got an 11-year-old son, right? So you have a son, I would assume a pretty active kid at 11, right? So between being a mom, being an author, a keynote, a podcaster, and a CEO of quite a large company, how are you putting it all? How do you make it work? How do you put it all together?
Yeah, and the other thing, my husband's an entrepreneur too.
Oh, right. We haven't even got to a whole. No,
right?
I'm going to have him come in too, so we can talk about that. Yeah. So you guys are both running companies.
Yeah, pretty much. Completely separate companies in whole different industries. Yeah, it's a pretty wild life. So people ask me how I balance it all. Well, first of all, I don't think that balance is a farce.
I know. This is my new thing too.
It's not.
Yeah.
You have to integrate things, and you have to make trade-offs and decisions about where you want to spend your time. And so that's what I do. And I've said no to other things so that I could be able to write my book and speak. But I couldn't do any of that if it weren't for my team.
Of course.
I mean, and it's not just my executive management team who they are rock stars and amazing and run the company really well. And I tell them that, like, I'm the CEO, but CEO, there's just some letters behind my name, right? We all have to play a role in running this company, and you all are running this company just as much as I am. And that's really empowering for them. And I teach them, like, you are an executive first, not responsible for your department, your area. And if you are only going to think of sales or operations or marketing or HR, then you can't be an executive in my company. Like, first and foremost, we run the company. And then second comes everything. And so
Interesting.
it really gives like that holistic,
Yeah.
they have a holistic view of the organization rather than just what the impact on their organization is. And so many amazing things happen because of that. Like my VP of Ops was just giving my VP of Sales money out of his budget.
Yeah, right.
We're trying to cut for next year. Make cuts for next year because
Yeah.
it was like, that's more important than this. And that you get that kind of ownership
Yeah,
thinking
absolutely.
rather than like,
Absolutely.
oop, nope, I've got to hoard my stuff.
Yep.
So without that team and then the amazing Stoneage team who they show up every day and they do their jobs, not because somebody's watching them or monitoring them coming in and clocking in and clocking out. They are doing it because they care about each other, they care about the company, they care about their bottom line, but most importantly, they care about our customers going home safely every night because our industry is such a dangerous industry. And so if I didn't have this amazing team around me, I wouldn't have been able to do this. And I told my team when I was getting ready to launch the book, you know, there's so much going on kind of September through mid-November with it. I said, I got to lean on you guys to do this. And we're in planning season, we're in budgeting season, and I'm going to be gone a lot. And they're like, are you kidding? Like, go do this. Like,
Yeah, go make it happen.
Go make
Cool.
this happen. And you don't worry about a thing. And so I couldn't have done it if I didn't have a team.
Yeah.
If I had to be there in every day-to-day detail running the company,
Yeah, that
I
happened.
couldn't have done that. And so, but after 17 years, I should have done that. If I can't say for 2 months, I'm going to go and I'm going to focus on something else and the company is going to fall apart without me there, then I've done a poor job of building a good company.
Right, yeah.
And so, you know, I think it's a testament to the team that we've built that I was able to go and do this. But it's hard. And, you know, it causes, I mean, the biggest fight that my husband and I get around is my insane drive to, you know, to do more things, to make this impact. And I'm gone a lot. And my number one job is to be a great mother.
Yep.
And I modeled to my son what you know, being a strong female leader looks like. And I'm not the kind of person who says like, I'm sacrificing everything for my child. I don't think that that's good for kids. Like, you need to teach them how to to live their life.
Yes.
And that's what I talked to Jack about. Like, I'm living my life and you're benefiting from it in so many ways.
Yeah,
But you know, I don't miss games.
Yep.
And I tuck them into bed every night that I'm there. I make dinner for them every night that I'm there. And so a lot of it is just setting boundaries around what I'm going to do, what I'm not going to do. I do not work past 6 o'clock. That is my family time.
Cool.
I get up really early in the morning.
What is early?
I get up at 4.
4?
Get up at 4 every morning, and I work out and I get my day all set. And
What time do you go to bed?
I'm trying to be in bed by 9.
By 9?
I need 7 hours of sleep.
Okay,
I get
fair
7
enough.
hours. I almost get 7 hours of sleep to the, you know, not always, but like
you're
to the
pretty.
dot.
Yeah, again, you're pretty driven.
Very disciplined.
Disciplined.
Yeah,
right.
very disciplined. So, and then you got to do things efficiently, and
Okay.
that's the other piece of it.
Yeah.
Is I mean, my husband laughs at me because of the way I unload the dishwasher. I get everything put, so I only have to make like 3 trips across. He puts like 1 dish away.
Yeah, one at a time.
I was like, but that takes you 10 minutes. I get the dishes put away in like 2 minutes and 30 seconds.
Yes.
So I just try to use my time really efficiently, and I set boundaries.
Yep.
And I have a great team who is there
good
to
advice.
be able to handle the day to day, so that I can focus on some of these bigger things.
So what's what's next after? So you got the book. It just came out in October. You're doing keynotes. You're lining up keynotes and
Yep.
stuff and
Yep.
stuff like that, and then.
Yep.
And teaching, I guess, teaching and telling your story.
Yes, yeah. So it's the rest of 2024 is really going to be about speaking events and running Stoneage. And I'm careful about the events that I do. I have to like really believe in the mission and you know, doing the women's symposium, like anything around women and leadership and helping women grow.
Yeah.
Like, yeah. I mean, somebody
Near and dear to your heart.
Yeah, exactly. I'm just getting ready to do this big interview, and one of the questions was like, if money was no object, what would you do? And I was like, oh, start a venture fund and just help women entrepreneurs. Like, you know, we need more women in business. We need to teach women how to go out and go after what they want and ask for what they want and build these great companies. And so I do a lot of those types of things. And then I think in the summer I'm going to start on book number 2. Book number 2 is going to be, you know, they always say, well, your first book is very autobiographical.
Sure.
You want to get your story out. And so my second book, it's not going to be about my story. It's going to be about the relationship that we have with work on our journey to find purpose and meaning in work, which I think is going to be even more important as we go through this technology revolution that's going to completely change the way that we work. And so I want to interview hundreds of people from individual contributors and blue collar jobs all the way to the C-suite, and build stories around how we go about finding our talents, practicing to gain mastery, and then finding purpose and meaning so that we can live happier, more fulfilled lives.
Well, I cannot wait to watch the next couple of years of rolling this out, and book number 2 right out of the gate. So power to you,
Yeah. Well, it probably won't come out for I figure that I'll do, because those interviews are going to take some time.
Oh, I'm sure.
And so I figure so I'm going to start that in the summer. So I figure that in the summer of 2025 is when I'm going to go take my month sabbatical and just go write the book. That's kind of what I've got planned.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. All right. Well, I think that's all the time we have today. I probably should have you back. Maybe we'll get your husband in here too, so you guys can talk about how you guys are running that company, or how he's running that company as well. But I really appreciate you coming all the way out to Cleveland, Ohio. You could meet her if you want to meet her. You can come meet her at the Exit Planning Summit. She's leading the Women in Exit Planning Symposium. I'm trying to convince her to stay for a few extra days and see what we do as well. So with that, thank you.
Thank you.
And our next show is January 31st. So make sure you subscribe, listen, and leave a review on all of those podcast platforms. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you next time.